KMCV7, the only local channel covering all of the CNMI.
You're just in time for KMCV News.
Here's a look at what's coming your way in the next half hour. The price tag on the damage done by Sunday's earthquake in Guam is mounting, but Governor Joseph Atta is refusing federal assistance.
The earthquake has forced many of Guam's tourists to spend the rest of their vacation here. Saipan's hotel industry is scrambling to accommodate them.
And the condition of a local attorney who was injured in an altercation Monday night gets worse. He needs further surgery in Hawaii.
Those stories and more next on KMCV News 7. Buenas noches para todos amzu tata Saipan luta zantinian guahu sikarlada dilian guerrero.
Good evening and welcome to the Wednesday cast of KMCV News. I'm Nanette Miranda.
Longshot Willie Ogden and Vicky Tadella will join us later in the cast with a look at the day's weather and sports. But first, news from Guam continues to top our cast this evening. The island of Guam is still recovering from Sunday's devastating earthquake. Governor Joseph Atta is refusing a federal handout despite the mounting price tag, which now includes a downed power plant. KUAM's Patrick McMurtry has the details.
The hot topic here on Guam is the governor's decision not to ask for a presidential declaration in the wake of the great quake of '93. Senator Tommy Tanaka is calling this a political move. Governor Atta makes no bones about it. He is worried about the tourism dollars being lost and the impression in Japan of what would happen if he was forced to ask for a presidential declaration. The Japanese media has been all over Guam covering this quake to the extent far greater than it was during Typhoon Omar and the aftermath of the 5 typhoons that followed. Right now, it's strictly a political move. Some feel that Governor Atta is not asking for this. The impact will be enormous. The damage to the infrastructure right now, government officials are saying, is probably going to run about $10 million. Normally, FEMA would come in and help cover the cost of that. 75% of that cost would be covered by FEMA, the damage to the schools and the power system and the water wells. Now the government of Guam is asking the taxpayers of Guam to cover that tab, in addition to losing that revenue or having to spend that money from an already strapped budget. The loss of the gross receipts tax and the hotel occupancy tax from the dwindling tourism numbers is also going to have a tremendous impact on the Gov Guam coffers. Right now, the Hotel and Restaurant Association is meeting behind closed doors to determine exactly how many hotel rooms would be available for Japanese tourists, if any do decide to come here in the next few days. Right now, we have reports that several hotels, the Hilton, the Nikko, the Daiichi, the Reef, the Palm Resort, are all closed for business, in addition to the Grand Hotel, are all closed for business. There's no word when they will reopen. Several of them, the Hilton, the Grand, and the Palm Resort, we're not looking for them to open anytime soon.
Patrick, could you update us on the power and water situation?
Guam got dealt a heavy, heavy blow today when Navy officials say preliminary indications are that the PD power plant, which produces 50 megawatts of electricity to the island, may never turn another turbine. This comes as a big surprise to power officials. Just yesterday, Navy Public Works spokesperson Miriam Gallet said that it was impossible to determine the extent of the damage. 12 hours later, Navy officials say it looks like the very worst expectation has come true. The PD power plant may be down. As it stands now, most of Guam does have power. Most of Guam has water. 92 of the 96 water wells are functional. About 70% of the island has power right now. GPA is in the process of bringing the huge Cabra 66 megawatt baseload generator up online. It's been down for the last 2 months for routine maintenance. But with the loss of the PD power plant, the island-wide power system is extremely vulnerable at this point.
Patrick, as we're approaching the school year, you mentioned damage to schools. Is there any thought of delaying the opening of schools?
Carlotta, there is some thought to running double schedules and to adding temporary classrooms. At this point, putting off the school year is an absolute last resort. As you know, we are still in the midst of the typhoon season, and last year we lost so many days due to the typhoons. It threw the school system into chaos trying to figure out how to make those days up. The government of Guam does not want to get behind the 8 ball before the school system even starts.
The earthquake's devastation has forced many of Guam's hotels to send its guests here. The boost in tourism comes during the peak season for Japanese travelers. Glenn Wakai reports on how the tourism industry is trying to accommodate the surge of arrivals.
When the earth moved under Guam, the tourists there were moved to Saipan. Busloads of them are arriving from Guam each afternoon. Hotel Nikko Saipan President Mitsuo Kitajima says in the past 3 days he's seen 500 additional reservations just for August.
As I said, this is peak season, highest season, so we don't have much room available within this August.
General Manager Clifford Grower says demand has exceeded available rooms.
We were already quite full because of being peak season, but we've had about 100 extra room nights booked since the earthquake because of the earthquake.
Likewise, tour operators are overwhelmed by the influx. Manager of Creative Tours Micronesia, Mikio Hirooka, enjoys the business, but he says he doesn't want to gloat at Guam's expense.
The possibility would be happening sometime in Saipan, so that I don't want to be happy for this situation.
The situation is expected to continue for a number of weeks.
It's a repeat of the Typhoon Omar situation. It's unfortunate Guam keeps on getting this situation, but Saipan keeps on benefiting from it.
Despite the short-term boost, there may be a long-term negative impact if Guam garners a reputation as a disaster area.
Most of the Japanese investors consider that Guam and Saipan is the same place as a whole Micronesian island. They will hesitate to make an investment here in this island.
Attorney James Grizzard is in Guam Memorial Hospital, where doctors are fighting to stabilize him for a flight to Honolulu for further surgery. He was injured in an altercation around 11 o'clock Monday night at the Cafe Mogambo when he fell and hit his head after being shoved backwards by attorney Ted Mitchell. Grizzard's wife, Bobby, gave reporters an interview at Guam Memorial Hospital today regarding her husband's condition.
Well, right now he's in critical condition. He has had a cranial surgery where they've removed the blood from the outer cranial area, and in doing so he did have a heart attack, and so now he has been stabilized. His heart is in pretty poor shape, and he's they're just holding on for about 2 to 3 days, possibly even 5 days at the longest, to see how his heart's going to be. He will have to be medevac to Hawaii for further neurosurgery, and they just can't do it in the shape that his heart's in right now. The critical time is between now and as I say, 3 to 5 days. They just don't know whether he can make it that length of time.
Grizzard is 59 years old and a longtime resident of the NMI. Craig Beidelsbach, the manager of Rudolfo's restaurant, was an eyewitness to the altercation, and in an interview today, he disputed several of the points made by Ted Mitchell in a phone interview with KMCV News yesterday. Beidelsbach says that a man named Rick was the one that pinned Mitchell against the wall, but it was done, he says, quote, after the fact that Jim Grizzard was unconscious on the floor, end quote. Beidelsbach says, contrary to what Mitchell says, quote, his behavior was unruly and disruptive, his language was insulting, end quote. When Grizzard saw Bill Fitzgerald trying to break up an argument between Mitchell and David Wickline, Beidelsbach says Grizzard told him, quote, I'm going to go and break it up, end quote. Beidelsbach says Grizzard is an acquaintance of both Mitchell and Fitzgerald, and he says, quote, I did not see any intent of an attack on Grizzard's part. My feeling is that Mr. Mitchell instigated the whole situation, and I think everybody there would agree with that, end quote. When contacted for comment today, Ted Mitchell says he stands by the story that he gave us previously. Mitchell says that he went to the hospital yesterday to have his neck examined. He asked the police to be there, and at 5:49 p.m. yesterday, he filed a report with the police saying that he'd been assaulted. He says, quote, the real concern here is for the full and immediate recovery of Jim Grizzard, end quote.
And coming up after the break, one of the 7 men arrested last month in a buy-bust ICE operation is set free this afternoon.
And a traveling drama group from Vanuatu brings their message about AIDS to the NMI. Stay tuned. The The loss of $120 million federal dollars for infrastructure development and the potential reduction of alien workers will have more of an impact on the islands of Tinian and Rota than on Saipan. Washington Representative Juan Babautez asked the chairman of the U.S. House and Senate Natural Resources Committees, Senator Bennett Johnston and Congressman George Miller, to consider how their actions will affect development on Rota and Tinian. Rota Senator Paul Manglona says the issue of minimum wage is an example of how sometimes what's good for Saipan may not be in the best interest of Rota and Tinian. For example, Manglona says he initially fought having a uniform wage for the Commonwealth, but gave in rather than be accused of playing island politics. Rota and Tinian may not be able to partake of the same favorable economic conditions that built up Saipan, but it's unfortunate, he says, they must share in the consequences of that buildup.
Rota and Tinian again are not yet developed as Saipan, and so yes, we're going to get hurt because now I believe that a lot of these issues are coming up because, as Miller pointed out, the government issue in the Commonwealth, which is basically in Saipan, we don't have government in Rota, we don't have government in Tinian, and yet we're paying for some of the problems that are being raised up by the U.S. Congressman. George Miller in particular. So I agree with the Washington rep that we should look at this. We should look at alien labor legislation that would affect the whole Commonwealth when actually it does not pertain to the problems that we are facing in the other islands.
Manglona says members of the Rota delegation might go to Washington along with other NMI leaders for meetings with key congressional leaders.
Well, we have been informed by our government's consultants in D.C. that it is best if delegations from the various islands, leaders of the Commonwealth, to meet with Congressman George Miller and his Senate counterpart. We have to show them a picture of the Commonwealth, that the Commonwealth really consists of various islands and different needs.
Senator David Singh of Tinian says he also intends to go to Washington to continue the fight for 702 funds.
Some health experts would say that AIDS has reached pandemic proportions. They would also say no part of the world is immune from this deadly disease, not even the Western Pacific. But this message has been difficult to get across here because social workers say locals think the HIV virus will somehow bypass their small island. A small theater group from Vanuatu, however, is out to change that mindset throughout Micronesia. Actors from the Small Bag Theater are in town to perform Like Any Other Lover, a drama about the emergence of AIDS in this area. Chris, the character with AIDS, tests positive for the virus, which he caught from a woman he met at a nightclub. Now he has to deal with his friends.
In the same class, what difference does it make?
It could be a difference between life and death, according to you, Mark.
Come on, you two. Have you got AIDS?
Has to deal with every one of his co-workers about his disease. They all treat him like a leper.
Can't you just give it to me? What do you have to tell everyone, Tom?
When Chris finally decides to go back to his island to die, his fellow villagers also reject him. In fact, they want to kill him themselves.
They'll be too frightened to come near me. No, my son. Please, don't go. Don't go. I'm sorry. Forgive me. Please forgive me. Get out of my way. Oh.
The message of this play is that AIDS is preventable and that there are human faces behind this disease who need love and care. If you missed any of today's free performances, the group has one more show you can catch. It's tonight at 7 o'clock in Charlie's Cabaret at the PIC. In court news, a local woman accused of perjury and deceptive business practices may plead guilty to those charges by the end of the month. Today at a hearing in Superior Court, Assistant Attorney General Russ Marsh indicated that plea negotiations are underway between him and Betty Sarkis' attorney, Tony Atalig. Sarkis allegedly made false or misleading statements to the CNMI government last year for the purpose of obtaining an offshore banking license. She is due back in court for another hearing on August 26. If plea negotiations aren't successful by then, Sarkis is scheduled for a jury trial on August 30th. And one of the 7 men arrested in a buy-bus ICE operation last month is out free. Loreto Gondo's case was dismissed this afternoon in Superior Court by Special Judge Rex Kozak. According to Gondo's attorney, Jay Sorensen, his client had nothing to do with the drug case. Apparently, shortly after the arrest, one of the 7 men had originally implicated Gondo as the source of the crystal methamphetamine. He named his source only as Lito, but there was some confusion as to which Lito because there were 2 Litos accused. At today's hearing, one of the 7 men arrested had changed his version of the story, implicating another Lito, Angelito Mana'ai. Gondo was set free today at 2:30.
There was a major groundbreaking yesterday. Marianas Island Housing Authority has a new facility, and we can all look forward to that. Here's that story. By this time next year, Islanders should have a new 12,000 square foot facility in which to hold community events in. The Marianas Island Housing Authority is using $650,000 in federal money from the Community Block Grant Development Funds to build a multi-purpose center in Susupi. At yesterday's groundbreaking ceremony, MIHA Director John Sablon talked about how he expects the building will probably be used.
It will serve as a community gathering for meetings, convention, graduation ceremonies, and social events. It can be used also for promotion of economic activity in the CNMI.
The building is scheduled to be completed within the next 300 calendar days, and once done, it'll be able to hold up to 600 people. The governor says the price tag on the facility is small, especially in comparison to what it will deliver back to the community.
The contract prices of this building is $650,000. That is not inexpensive. It is an investment. It is an investment that will be a worth of millions of dollars to us in progress from social and cultural events that will take places under its roof.
MIHA board member Benjamin Sablon chaired the committee that developed the multipurpose center. He says the quality of life in the Commonwealth will see an improvement with the opening of the center.
Gone are the days where major events and activities will be held under a tent or canopy. I say, ladies and gentlemen, we are moving up with style.
Construction Materials Supply Company won the bid to construct the multi-purpose center. They were the lowest of 12 bids submitted for the project.
I now bid that it's time for the sports segment of our newscast. Do you second that motion, Longshot?
That's right. We got scores in Major League Baseball, and with all the injuries occurring, we'll take a look at sports medicine. Fourth annual NMI Powerlift competition will be held on Saturday, August 21st at the Ada Gymnasium in Susupi. Interested competitors must weigh in at the gym between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. on Saturday. Then the contest will get underway at 2 p.m. There will be no charge for admission. However, registration to compete is $5. The contest will challenge the strength of competitors in 3 events: the bench press, deadlift, and squat. Trophies will be awarded to those who lift the most weight in all 3 events combined. For more info about the Powerlift, contact John H. Davis at 234-1002. In the NFL, the Jets lose wide receiver Terrence Mathis for the next 3 to 4 weeks with torn cartilage in his left knee. The Jets are hoping to have Mathis back in time for the season opener, September 5th, against the Denver Broncos.
Dallas. Will Troy Aikman be there? The Cowboy quarterback now has medical clearance to resume full practice 6 weeks after back surgery. Cleared to play Saturday night on ESPN against the Raiders, but he'll likely be held out until the Cowboys' final preseason game. Steve Young may miss San Francisco's season opener. The 49er quarterback suffered a hairline fracture of his throwing thumb right there Sunday against the Raiders. Young says it's like a ballerina stubbing their toe. Team doctor says worst-case scenario, last year's MVP could miss. Phil News with the Giants. They get bad news on second-round pick Mike Strahan. The defensive lineman will miss as much as 8 weeks with a severe foot sprain. The foot sprain occurred in the opener against the Bengals. Speaking of Cincinnati, they've released 7-year starting strong safety David Fulcher. He called the release a slap in the face. 3-time Pro Bowler, may be replaced by rookie Lance Gunn out of Texas. And Steve Broussard back in Falcon camp. The veteran allegedly broke curfew last Wednesday, didn't play in Friday's game against Miami, but has returned. So has holdout Billy Joe Tolliver back in camp with a 1-year deal. He figures to back up Chris Miller and Bobby Hebert. Holdout Bobby Humphrey wants $1.3 million from Miami. The Dolphins are offering $650,000. That will reduce that figure unless Humphrey signs on Tuesday. And quick Leonard Harris has re-upped with the Oilers.
That's the first half of the Miller Sports Page. When I come back, we hope to go to the ballpark and check out the Aces. Well, I guess we're not going to be going to the ball field. Anyway, in baseball, the Detroit Tigers placed pitcher David Wells on the 15-day disabled list with an inflamed left elbow. A lot of injuries has been occurring lately, and that brings us to our next feature, sports medicine, which the LA Dodgers are on top of it. Here's Dan Rutz with that report.
Hours before the fans file into Dodger Stadium, the team is at work warming up for another game.
By the time that ball leaves my hand, until it gets to you, you got your hands up. Now you hit that ball this way, not this way.
Okay, leave it as is then, right?
Dodgers manager Tommy Lasorda is out there day after day. For more than an hour, he hurls pitches while he barks advice and instructions. He's also there as an example.
They look at me, I'll be 66 in September, say, how could that guy get out there and throw like he does? But I show them that you got to work in this game.
The Dodgers don't just work on the fundamentals in their warm-ups. For years, there's been an emphasis here on doing what's necessary to stay healthy.
A guy can pitch a ball game in Fairbanks, Alaska in December. He won't hurt his arm if his muscles are thoroughly loose. When a guy's hurt muscles is that they're not warmed up properly.
The Dodgers are probably better than any other team that I've been with. I've been with Toronto Blue Jays, the San Francisco Giants, Pittsburgh Pirates, and now back here with the Dodgers. And I think it's more of an education than anything else.
A decade ago, the Dodger physicians and trainers developed simple exercises to strengthen shoulders, subject to injury from continuous hard throwing. Players are still encouraged to follow the routine.
I had surgery on my elbow before I came over here. The Dodgers saw that my shoulder wasn't as strong as it needed to, which placed a lot of too much emphasis on my elbow, which then caused both injuries, a shoulder injury in '86 and the elbow in '89.
Relief pitcher Jim Gott says he's had no problems since then because he faithfully follows team recommendations for muscle strengthening and stretching.
And relax, switch it over. Turn the page.
The old attitude that good players can get by on talent alone is changing, says assistant trainer Charles Strasser, as athletes see the value of preparing their bodies for every game.
God didn't put any of us on this earth to throw a baseball. So every time you're doing that, it's abnormal, and you do have some type of microscopic tearing or some type of, tear down in the shoulder.
There are many risks in professional sports. Conditioning and proper warm-up reduces both the chance of injury and the wrath of Tommy Lasorda.
Let's go to the Miller scoreboard now. In the National League, San Francisco Giants defeated Cincinnati Reds 2-1. Florida stopped Chicago 3-2 in 15 innings. The Cardinals branded the Pirates 4-2. Philadelphia beat Montreal 5-2. And the Braves edged the Mets 3-2. In the American League, Detroit killed Baltimore 15-1. Chicago shut out Oakland 4-0. Kansas City stopped Seattle 4-1. Toronto banged Minnesota 6-3. Boston held New York scoreless 5-0. And in 10 innings, Milwaukee squeaked by Cleveland 5-4. Texas defeated California 6-3. One other note in baseball, Chicago White Sox third baseman Robin Ventura was suspended for 2 games for the charging the mound and fighting Texas Rangers pitcher Nolan Ryan. And don't forget, right after the John Anderson Show, it's Game 3 and maybe the final game on Saipan Major League Baseball. You can catch it live, Channel 7. And that ends the Miller Sports Page. I'm Longshot Willie. Don't go away. Vicky will be back with the weather report.
Good evening and welcome back. Because we're running out of time, let's start tonight's weather report with our season surf information. Seas tonight will be moderate, 3 to 5 feet. Surf conditions 46 feet on southwestern clockwise through northern beaches and reefs, and 2 to 4 feet elsewhere. And if you're planning to go fishing this evening, don't go to the western coast of the island's beaches due to the water runoff, which was found to have fecal coliform bacteria. The first sight this evening will take place up at 7:15 with a low of 1.4 feet, and the tide will rise to a high of 2.1 feet at 1:10 early Thursday morning. The sun will set at 6:45 this evening, and sunrise tomorrow morning will be at 6:07. And for tomorrow's forecast, expect mostly cloudy skies with isolated light showers and the high temperature in the upper 80s. And that's all for our weather report.
Before we go, please stay tuned to the John Anderson Show tonight at 7 o'clock. John's guest is Vatican Representative Matthew Blockley. They will be talking about Catholicism and its teachings. Be sure to call in. On behalf of everyone here at KMCV News 7, thanks for joining us this evening. Good night.
Good night.